Hello, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to another episode of our virtual book club. We're so glad that you have chosen to join us today as we continue to explore the book Seasoned with Grace, God's Recipe for Healthy Family Communication. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump into it soon as we come right back.
I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and relationship coach, and welcome to Unboxed, a frank and straightforward conversation about relationships. We're going to talk about family, church, workplace, and all other types of relationships. Join me for the next few moments as we unbox the power and potential of relationships and help you to live your best life.
Once again, welcome back to another episode of our virtual book club sponsored by Unbox, where we seek to unbox the power and the potential of relationships. And when we say relationships, we mean family relationships, workplace relationships. But today, we're specifically focusing on family relationships as we continue to explore the book Seasoned with Grace, God's Recipe for Healthy Family Communication. So I'm so excited. Let me just take a second or two as we're waiting for our guests to join us. Let's take a second or two and just kind of recap what we have been addressing so far. Over the last few weeks, we have been looking at God's design for the family. And then we've spent time also exploring how that design for the family is replicated through generations, either the way God wanted it to be replicated or the dysfunctional ways, unfortunately, unproductive ways that is replicated, but that we replicate it. We refer to it as pre-programming the emotional computer. We're all born with a computer that is pre-programmed, and then additional stuff is put on our computers as we grow and as we experience life based on where we live, who our family is, different experiences, etc. The last week, we really spent the majority of our time focusing in on how we strengthen communication between husbands and wives. How do we strengthen husband and wife communication? And we looked a lot last week about the role of the wife in having strong, productive husband and wife communication. And we talked about the importance of demonstrating respect towards the husband. And we ended last week by addressing how important it is, especially in the African-American home, where unfortunately the African-American man experiences an awful lot of challenges in society, an awful lot of pushback and discriminations. And so one of the places that he needs to go to feel and where he needs to be respected and to perceive that respect and to be encouraged and lifted up as a strong, powerful man is in his home. And so today we're going to go to the other side. We spent an awful lot of time talking about how we build up the man. Let's talk a little bit about how we build up the woman. And so we're going to get right into it. We're going to finish chapter 2, and then we're going to jump into chapter 3, where we spend some time talking about parent-child communication. So I'm so glad to have our guests who are here, and we have other guests who are joining shortly. And I want to go ahead and jump right into this. The question I want to say is, we ended up talking about, here it is. What are your thoughts about the author's handling of the husband's obligation to show love to the wife? We talked about the wife's obligation to show respect to the husband, but then the Bible in Ephesians 5 talks about the husband's responsibility of showing love to the wife. So what are your thoughts about the author's handling of the husband's obligation to show love to the wife, the queen of the house? Do you see equality? And I want you to get that there. Do you see equality in the way the husband and the wife are to treat each other in the marriage relationship? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So we talked about the woman's responsibility to show that respect in order to build up the man. And then the Bible talks about love. So I want to ask that question. Do you think that there is equality in the way that the husband and the wife are to treat each other in the marriage relationship, as it was demonstrated in the book, I'm going to open that up. I see we have Mickey here, and I see Lee and Mary are getting their device together. Let me start with you, Mickey. All right, I was calling on Mickey, but I'm going to wait. I think I'm waiting for those to jump right in. My wife is getting her stuff together, and she's going to join us in just a second. So let me filibuster here for just a moment, and we still have some folk that are getting their technology together as we move forward. So one of the things that the Bible says is that husbands are to love their wife. And we explored this in the book. Husbands are to love their wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, so that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. All right, my mic is working awesome. So she might be holy and without blemish. And so the Bible also says that wives should submit to their husbands. So it seems, the wife is submitting to the husband. We talked about the husband having the scriptures prescribes that the husband has the veto power in the relationship. But then it flips and says that the husband should love the wife even as Christ loves the church. So again, the big question is, as you look at the role of the woman as it relates to respect, and the role of the man as it relates to love, I ask again, do you see equality in that? Or does it seem like there is a power differential between the husband and the wife? And so I want to open that up. Do you see the equality in that, or do you see a power differential? Who wants to kick us off today?
Well, I was going to say, I do see the equality. I do not see a power differential. What I see is a difference in roles. With the woman having, maybe I'm biased, but probably the more important role of the two, in that she gets to decide who the leader of her home is, who she gets to respect and obey. So by the time we get to a relationship where it's committed, it's easy for her to respect, obey, and do all those things that the Bible says. And by doing so, I think it's easy for the man to reciprocate by doting over his wife, providing and loving her like the church. So I think it's reciprocal in that you don't know where it starts or ends. And at the same time, I don't think it's an uneven hand.
I want to explore this a little bit more, especially thinking about how the book looks at it, because you threw a word in there that a lot of people hear when they hear the word submit, and when they hear the word, reverence,
obey,
honor, and that's the word obey. the word obey is not used in the scripture context that you're supposed to obey your husband. So I kind of want to explore that. It talks about honoring your husband. It talks about submitting to your husband. But the word is that I didn't find was the word obey. I'm interested in hearing how you brought the word obey into that.
Well, when I think about obeying in the context of relationship, I'm not thinking about obey like a parent and a child relationship, but more of a listening and taking advice relationship.
Okay, listening and taking advice relationship.
Being open to the other person's advice and opinions and their influence. That's the word I was trying to think of.
Okay.
Trying to, be open to their influence.
All right. So you do see equality there. I'm interested in seeing if there's anyone here that sees the Ephesians chapter 5 scripture as not having equality, as perhaps the man has too much power in the relationship, or maybe that the woman has too much power in the relationship. Is there anyone who does not see this as being equal? Is there anyone who does not see this as being equal? And I'm so glad to see Crystal just weighed in, giving us a big hey to you, Crystal. And for those of you who are watching, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share our program today. So is there anyone who didn't see the power, that does see it as being unequal between the husband and the wife, or at least the way that it was presented in the book and the way that it's presented in Ephesians 5?
Well, let me just say this one last thought before someone else jumps in about their uneven view. I'm looking at it through the lens of a 2021 marriage.
Okay.
Where I feel like I'm an equal in my relationship. So objectively, I do see that, and subjectively, I see it as being equal.
Okay, so let me go here to ask this then. You said it within the context of the 2021 relationship. So do you think that your 2021 relationship personally and the 2021 relationships that you've seen, at least from this perspective about power sharing, do you think that the way it's done is biblical, or does the biblical model call for something a little more unequal? What are your thoughts in that regard?
Ooh, I have to think about that.
Okay, can I?
Yes, please jump on in. I'm waiting for you. Welcome.
Okay, so if we are looking at a relationship from the biblical concept, we know that whatever Christ does, he does it well. When he created Adam and Eve, he said, "This is what I want you guys to do." He didn't say together, right? So your work is shared. The children, like everything is shared. So if we're looking at it from the biblical point of view, then no, it is not unequal, because in order, it is balanced, because whatever God does is balanced. So if two people with two different roles come together and work together, I think that's what makes the whole.
There has been an awful lot. I want to stay with you for a second, Mickey. There's been an awful lot of pushback in recent years, and rightfully so. Let me be the first one. As a male, there has been a huge power differential between husbands and wives, and then that has led to all kinds of abuses over the millennials. I mean, the millenniums. So. My question, and I got so busy explaining, I forgot what my key question was. What?
Biblical. Let me comment on that real quick. I think that we can't discount that. We can't discount that there was a culture of a power differential, right? But that does not mean that was God's prescription. That's what we did with it. That doesn't mean that's what God presented to us.
So then how does equality look? And then we'll move on. And I think you kind of hit on it, Mickey. How does that look before we move on?
Like I said, each person has a role, right? Just like we said last week, each person in a relationship has a role. And if we work together in our specific strengths, then we are sharing equal responsibilities. So so for example, my job as a wife is to respect my husband.
Okay.
As long as my husband is able to explain to me what respect looks like to him, so that I'm giving him 100%, then I have done my aspect of Ephesians. When he feels respected, then I can be loved, because like Denise said, it's a reciprocal effect. So that's kind of what I would see equality as, is both individuals giving or doing their part.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to page 27. I want to read something because I think this kind of sets the tone as well. When we talk about husbands, love your wife. Before I even go to that, what does that mean? Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Because I think we have a very clear understanding about submission. I know at least men do, what they understand and define as submission. And I think sometimes that definition, not sometimes, way too often, that definition has led to all kinds of abuses, mistreatments, etc. So as we look at Ephesians chapter 5, and we say, husbands, love your wives, talk about how that looks and how that prevents and negates abuse of power. Talk about that.
Well, I would
Love
say
is a
in the
verb.
past, one would think that submission is a verb for a woman, something that she has to do, continuously do, and continuously prove. And then the man really, you don't know if you're being submissive until the man tells you that you're being submissive or not being submissive.
Okay.
And I think that the misconception about men loving is that the love itself is not a verb. It's just a word that you should just know he loves you because he's providing. Whereas I think the correct definition of that love means that it's something that you put in action. It is as much a verb as submission is. So it's not just what you say, it's how you talk, how you treat your wife, the fact that you're providing for her, the fact that you listen. It involves a lot, just like submission does. And therein lies the balance again.
You know, one of the things that I think about within this context, when we say love, and I think that love really does bring a balance, because the man's responsibility, and we talked a lot about the woman's responsibility, but within this context, the man's responsibility is to ensure that he is not abusing his power. So when it says love the wife as Christ loves the church, and therein is the model, as Christ loves the church. So the question then becomes, has Christ been abusive? And I'm not talking about have people been abusive in the church system or used the church as a means to be abusive. I'm talking about from all of the biblical evidence that we have, from all of the scriptural references that we have, do we have any indication that Christ was abusive towards the church? And the answer is no. We don't have any indication. We have just the opposite, that, you know, he describes himself, and those who write about the relationship that Christ has with the church describes it as a protective and a loving and an empowering and a nurturing relationship. So then if the man is to love the wife the way that Christ loves the church, that in and of itself protects against there not being equality. Because if the husband loves the wife like Christ loves the church, then one of the things that the husband is going to want to do is make sure that the wife has more power in the relationship. Throughout the scriptures, we see Christ giving his church spiritual gifts so that they can do what he does. In other words, he gives them the gift of being able to raise the dead, heal the sick, cast out demons, and even to a greater extent than he did those things. So what you're seeing here, and this was not in the book, but I want to share, what you're seeing is Christ attempting to continue to lift up his wife so that she has more power in the relationship. Now, when that happens, when the husband is intentional about ensuring that the wife knows she's loved, that she continues to, that his love makes it so that there is an equality in the marriage relationship and a sharing of power, then the issue about veto doesn't become as important. The issue about whether or not he's going to stomp all over her because she submits to him, it's not even an issue. It's not even something that even becomes important, because he demonstrates his love in such a way, and he is conscientious to the extent that this cannot happen. The environment, the atmosphere that is created from the love that he has towards her will prevent any types of mistreatments or abuse of power. I know I said a lot. Let's move on to page 27, because I think that's going to unpack it even more. Can someone read page 27 and just read that paragraph that says, "Remember what I said about the black man"? Can someone do that for me? Read page 27, that paragraph. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Remember what I said about the black man? Well, it's even more so regarding the black woman. For over 400 years, the black woman has been responsible for saving the black race in America from genocide. She has had to sacrifice so much to preserve her children and her husband while trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. It is important that the black man encourages, motivates, and builds up his sister so that in her castle, her home, and her kingdom, she knows that she is loved, cherished, and admired in a way that the media and culture have failed to do throughout all these various centuries.
And therein, and that's where, that's kind of where I'm patting myself on the back here. Therein comes the balance. So I want to talk about some practical things. How does the African-American man build up his queen so that she is astutely aware that she is the queen of the home? How does he do that? How does that look in everyday life, where he builds her up? He takes into consideration the challenges that have been posed upon her since, as Malcolm X said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Mm-hmm. So since Plymouth Rock landed on her, how does he actually do that? How does he say, you know what, you are a queen, and I don't care what has been the experience or what media and society says, this is how I'm going to affirm you? How does that look in real life? Well, I mean, I'm interested. You're married to a man who wrote a book about building up his life. So
I didn't realize the onus was just on me to answer the question, but practically, I just think, like, from everyday grind, just acknowledging her contribution to the relationship and to the household. I think that goes a long way. Whatever her love language is, add words of affirmation to whatever else her love language is. Just always affirming and acknowledging the contribution that she's made to the home and continues to make to the home. And maybe lighten the burden. I don't know. Some other women have to chime in, but that's me. That's what I like.
I am interested in hearing from Mickey as well.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm on stop. Okay, so for me, what makes me feel loved? Time, quality time, like spending. I don't care if it's me in the kitchen making dinner and you just sit there, you're with me. So quality time is very important to me. I wouldn't say I'm so much words of affirmation, but I like for you to tell me something. Like, just tell me something good about myself. Hey, babe, you look nice today. Or, you're such a hard worker. Or just try to sometimes pitch in. I come home, dinner is ready. One morning you could get up and do the laundry. Just surprise me. So that makes me feel loved.
You went through the whole book, The 5 Love Languages, right? Right. I think you hit all 5 of them. But what I heard from both of you that I think is important for the men who are watching and listening to this, what I heard from the two of you is that in order to really make someone your queen, you have to know them, because each queen is going to rule her kingdom differently. And one of the responsibilities of the king is to really know who his queen is. And so that he can ensure that she's loved according to the way that love is translated for her. And I know we talked about the 5 love language. I believe that book's by Gary Chapman. But yeah, the the way that it's translated for her. Am I kind of scratching where it itches on that one?
Yes.
Definitely.
But in addition to that, a general acknowledgement, I think, of the contribution, because I think in society, we tend to play up that the man is a hard worker, he's on the grind, he's this, he's that, not realizing the woman is hard, she works hard too, even if she's a stay-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've done both. I've stayed home and I've gone out the home to work, and both of them they're both work.
Yes. And so again, one of the things is to acknowledge, to understand, to of course that means to seek to understand the wife, so that you can be in a position, and then when you're in that position, to acknowledge what she does that makes her the queen. But I want to throw this in. Can we talk about what makes her the queen? This is something we talked about at the beginning of our discussion last week, and we'll end on this note. There is, even if the woman does not honor and respect and submit to the man, he still has an obligation to love and to cherish her. Remember, we talked about last week that, first of all, if you look at Ephesians chapter 5, coupled with how the marriage vows go, there are no qualifying clauses. And Ephesians chapter 5 doesn't put a qualifying clause. It doesn't say, husbands, love your wife, provided they treat you like with respect and with honor. It's no. Husbands, love your wife the way that Christ loves the church. And I want to pause it because, the church, or at least in the name of the church, has done some evils over the years. It was the church, especially the European church, that decimated the Native Americans. And matter of fact, indigenous peoples all over the world. It was the European church that enslaved, an entire continent, and has for the last 500 years been ravishing its resources and ensuring that the people there stay in an impoverished state. And yet Christ says, I love my church anyway. Even though the church is acting like the devil, I'm going to act with love towards the church. And I think that is so important when we talk about love, is that it's not a love that is based on what the other person does, but love based on just, I love you because I love you, and that's why I love you. I'm going to say that again. I love you because I love you, and that's why I love you. And so that is what the husband must do. And I want to talk to my brothers out there. It's not whether, I love and show her cherish, provided she respects me. And I know it's more difficult when you're not receiving that respect at home. However, your obligation is to ensure that she's the queen of the house, regardless. I want to move us to chapter. Go ahead. Yes.
I was going to ask you, is the same responsibility on the woman, or is it specifically on the man? And if it's just on the man, then we go back to the original question. There is an unevenness then.
All right. I see Kevin Brown is here. He says, talk to me. Kevin was sent a link because he's supposed to be here in person, but at least he's on Facebook. That's good enough. We'll take it right there. Go ahead. Ask your question again, sweetheart. I get distracted.
So I was asking, since you said that the man is responsible for loving the woman, even if she doesn't show respect and she's not submissive and honor him, then are you saying then what I'm saying, proposing, then if that's the case, if the number one, is it supposed to be reciprocated? Does the other way applies? If the man doesn't love the woman like she should be loved, should she then respect him? Is there a responsibility? Was there a God-given responsibility for her to respect and submit to him even when he doesn't love her? And if not, then there is an unevenness in the relationship,
Okay.
with the brunt of the burden being on the man.
So it's two ways, because don't forget, last week we were very clear that the woman has the power of choosing who's going to be the king of her home. But the same is also true to the man. He has the power of choosing who is going to be the queen of his home. You know, the same. It's a two-way street. Who is going to be? Devilier Snell, I just put him up there. He says, Pastor Snell says, "Hey Denise, is Robert worthy of respect?" So he wants to make sure you answer that question. Is Robert worthy of respect? So go ahead, answer that question.
Robert is worthy of respect. That's the short answer.
I think we need to ask the other question, which is does First Lady Snell think that Pastor Snell is worthy of respect?
Oh my God.
Maybe we'll have to bring her on here one day and interview her to get the answer to that question. But yes, so as the woman, you have the power to choose who's going to be the king. And as the man, you have the power to choose who's going to be your queen. And so you need to exercise that dutifully and diligently, which is one of the things the book talks about, is not marrying damaged goods. Not marrying damaged goods. So let me ask my participant.
I'm so sorry. So the affirmation that you talk about in there, making sure that the queen knows she's the queen, it's not for the sake of building her up because she's damaged, but affirming her, I guess, maintaining the health that's already there.
Yeah. So and that's important. Marriage is not a repair shop. You don't marry somebody so that you can fix them up. When we lived in Louisiana, I had a patient while I was a hospice chaplain who used to buy antique cars, and some of his cars have actually been shown in various Hollywood movies. I mean, he has those old antique cars, back in the 1920s and stuff. And so what he used to do was he would buy these cars, and then he would spend years tinkering with them and refurbishing them, and restoring. That's the word I was looking for. And restoring these cars. That's nice for cars. That's nice for a good old 1967 Mustang. That's not nice for marriage. You don't find someone who's damaged, who's broken, who has issues, who's in and out of institutional care, who continues to have all of these challenges and debilitating experiences in life, and says, "I'm going to marry that person, and I'm going to turn them into a queen." This is not Beauty and the Beast. That works well for Hollywood. You find the beast, and then you dance with them and they turn into somebody beautiful. That works in Hollywood. That works in Disney cartoons. It's a cartoon. It doesn't work in real life. But healthy people are not looking for people who are damaged to fix. People who are damaged look for damaged people to fix because it's easier to try to fix somebody else than to fix yourself. That's another story for another day. But we want to look for people who are healthy and try to have relationships with them. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts or experiences or insights around the idea of not marrying damaged goods? What has been your thoughts or experience around this whole idea of not marrying damaged goods?
I think you probably should explore that a little bit more as far as defining it, because we can come at a baseline knowing that all of us have had issues. All of us has had traumas of varying degrees in life, but just because of the world we live in, just because we wake up every day.
So yes, we all, no one is perfect, but there's a difference between being perfect and being healthy. And I like that word healthy, because think about it from a medical perspective. And then no one is a perfect physical specimen, except me, of course, but that's another story for another day.
It's hard.
It's hard being humble when you're perfect in everything. But, no one is physically perfect. Everyone has some blemishes or defects or whatever it may be, because if someone was perfect, then they wouldn't die. But so
well, I wanted us to be clear, because I know my hangups. Let me give you one example. I've had adults in my life who've not told the truth on me. And so it was actually you who pointed that out to me when with my kids at school. I just don't automatically believe adults when they tell me something about my children, good, bad, or ugly. And you pointed out to me, you're like, Denise, not everyone is going to experience the same as you. I know that you've had this experience, but that doesn't mean that this is how it really is. I see life and parenting through the lenses of how I was treated.
I don't want us to get sidetracked, but Pastor Snell, who refuses to be undone, just said Robert is a fixer-upper, and it worked for Denise. Now, that was totally unprovoked and unnecessary, but he said Robert is a fixer-upper, and it worked for Denise. But I'm not going to continue to go toe-to-toe with him. No mas, you win, sir. I'm going to be the bigger man here today because that's who I am. But yes,
Well, you wouldn't do the same thing to him.
But when we talk about health, and I'm glad you pointed that out, when we talk about health in a relationship, we're not talking about the perfect, but we're talking about people who do not have glaring issues. And so even with your example, you're looking for someone who doesn't have glaring issues. Of course, people were lied on as kids. Some people, were mistreated and whatnot. How has that debilitated their functioning and their ability to be present, open, honest, transparent, to be trusting, to be optimistic in relationships? These are things you're looking for. Is this person, do they have the ability to be open, honest, and transparent? Do they have the ability to be optimistic? Do they have the ability to trust? These are the type of things. And when those things are missing, do they have the ability to trust and to be trusted? And so when we talk about health, those are some of the characteristics that we're looking for, not someone, who has never had any issues or don't have certain things to overcome. So I'm glad that you asked for that clarification, because we all got something that we're dealing with. I want to shoot back one more time and give Mickey an opportunity about your thoughts or experiences or insights around the idea of not marrying damaged goods from a male or female perspective.
I guess I can relate to that. We're all damaged, yes.
Yes.
But we have to be aware that we're damaged and seek help prior to going into a marital relationship. Because I think what happens is that person becomes dependent. They come into the marriage looking for something that they're missing, and then they put the burden on the other individual to carry. So they're looking for their happiness in that individual, like all the things that they lack, they're looking for in that individual. And that individual is not, like, you're not God. Like, you can't provide the things that you yourself are trying to attain. So, yeah. So I think it's important that prior to, like, that person or each individual need to know what they're lacking, what they need, and find the proper help. Because obviously we're not going to be whole, but two people that come together that, quote unquote, have taken the necessary time to fix, quote unquote, fix themselves, then that will become a healthier marriage.
And one of the I want to make sure I put this in there. We live in a world today in movies and stuff where it tries to portray everyone as being damaged and broken and messed up. There are actually a lot of good people out here who come from strong, healthy, functioning homes, who are emotionally mature and who know how to, again, be honest, open, transparent, to be trusting and trustworthy, who just don't have a lot of issues. They're there. And these are the type of people you look for. One of the reasons that arranged marriages work so well in places like India and things of that nature is because the parents are looking, when they're looking for a mate for their child, they're looking at the big picture. They're looking at, how does this family function? Does the spouse that I'm looking for my child with, I don't want my child coming from a family. I want my child marrying, rather, a family where, everyone is in and out of the penitentiary, where they're thieves, promiscuous. Now I'm going to look for a family that is, upright and honorable, and the mother and father have a strong, healthy marriage, and these things. And so that I can find someone for my child that is, a complete and whole individual. Whatever your thoughts are about arranged marriages, the one thing about it is the parents are going to look for someone that is the strongest and healthiest for their child, not just the person who can make them laugh. Oh, she makes me laugh. He makes me laugh. Oh, he or she looks so attractive. Or, oh, he and she is this, that, and the other. No, not those superficial things. They're looking at more of the deeper things. So let's move on to chapter 3, and we'll spend just a few moments here in chapter 3, and then we'll move on. And as we talk about, so what is chapter 3 is entitled "Nurturing True Honor," and in this chapter we explore the biblical model of parent-child communication. So let me go ahead and jump in. This chapter begins by saying that the parent-child relationship is hierarchical, with the parent being the leader and the child being the subordinate. It uses that word hierarchical. The author goes on to say, children should be keenly aware of the distinction between the parents and the child's role and responsibilities. So, this hierarchical concept, what are your thoughts about this hierarchical concept as was presented in chapter 3?
I was going to say, I love it. My children may not. And we've actually had these discussions with one of our child, whose name I shall not mention. But all jokes aside, I think that parent-child relationship is important because it helps to form future relationships. I think it's important for the parent because they have to exercise control and they have to exercise being over someone who is vulnerable. And it's important for the child because they have to exercise submitting to authority and, being themselves in the midst of having someone have control over them.
You said something very profound, and you said something that made me think something profound because of what you said was being profound. Anyway, that is...
No, what I said was profound.
Yes, what you said was profound. And so it brought a thought into my mind.
Another profound thought. Okay.
Wives, submit to your husbands.
Just going off of what W said.
So with that being said, now the profound thought just left me. And the profound thought is this. You ready? That in the parent-child relationship, there is a maturing that takes place on both sides. The parent has to go through a maturing process as the child is going through a maturing process. That's not in the book, but what you just said made me think about that. This is requiring maturity on both the parent and the child. I don't know. Does that make any sense? Mickey or Denise, does that make any sense?
I think it does. I think that though the parent should come into it already mature to some degree, or their maturity should grow as the child grows. And I think they also have to give room for the child to mature, especially when the child starts going into those years, those summer years those winter years when they start becoming more independent and start bucking against the authority of the parent.
Yes. And as parents, we've been in those winter years. Mickey, I'm interested in hearing, what are your thoughts?
I'm so sorry. I got distracted. I'm looking for a key. Can you state the question again, please?
Well, we were just talking about the relationship between the parent and the child being hierarchical, with the parent being the leader and the child being the subordinate, and that kids should be keenly aware of that distinction. And I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts about the parent being the leader, child being subordinate. Your thought about that?
Well, growing up, that was what it was. Mom was the leader. So you knew that whatever she says, that's what you do. However, I think there should be a clear distinction. Like, I think a child should know their place and they should know who's in charge and all that. But also, I think that is important to have a good, open relationship with your children. They should be comfortable with talking to you, communicating with you, sharing their thoughts, their feelings. So I don't think we should come as a dictator, but they should know that there's a distinction. Like, I'm the parent, you're the child. However, I want you to feel comfortable with coming to me with whatever situation or problems that you may have.
We're going to spend the majority of next week in chapter 3, I can tell. But so I want to start bringing us to our close, because we unpacked an awful lot in the husband-wife relationship, which was supposed to only taking a few minutes, but I got excited. I think we all got excited. The author proposes that children are required to be respectful even when the parents are abusive or neglectful. So children are required to be respectful even when the parents are abusive or neglectful. What are your thoughts about that?
That's a tough one.
I totally agree. It's hard.
Before you, I'm going to cut you off for a second. Both of you said that's tough. Before you say you agree, and I'll bring you back to the you agree and why. Why is that tough? Talk about that. Why is that tough?
Because if you have a parent that is and you're talking about physical, mental, emotional abuse, right?
I'm talking about emotional,
all the abuses,
or sexual,
everything.
Yeah.
So if you have a parent that's supposed to love you and care for you and just provide for you, to be there, and then this person is hurting you. I mean, just talking about it, I'm like, oh, I can't, it's hard to respect that person, but that's a requirement. So it's going to take like a higher level power for you to be able to do that.
Why did
but
you?
They still, huh?
I was going to go to Denise and ask her why but finish your thought. I was going to ask her the same question, but finish your thought first.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, Denise, why did you say, that's difficult?
Ooh, I'm thinking about several different angles.
Okay.
From the point of a child, you have to respect that parent because they are being abusive. You have to show an outward respect. I think it does damage the heart.
Okay.
Not only does it damage future relationships, and it helps form you who you are and how you function in other relationships, not just in a marriage, but with other people. As a child, you don't know that's what's happening. As a child, all you know is that you're being abused and you're being mistreated. So you have no choice but to show an outward show of respect. As you get older and you start realizing that it's different, and you start acting out and being disrespectful as well, it's difficult because in your heart, you know that person may not deserve your respect, but at the same time, you're under their care, under their jurisdiction, under their control. So there's nothing you can do about it. And to me, it eats away at the heart. If that makes sense.
No, that makes an awful lot of sense. So I want to kind of finish off on what both of you were about to hit when you said that's difficult. And I want to kind of hone in on how then does an adult show respect to their parents who abused or abandoned them? How does an adult show that?
I think the key word is boundaries.
Boundaries. Talk about that.
Having been sitting under your tutelage, you know that you don't, what's the word you always say? You don't cut people off.
Yes.
That is not healthy. I know that on social media, we always say cut people, cut. We don't cut people off. That's not the healthy thing to do. But I think the healthy thing to do is create boundaries with people. There are parents that you may never be lovey-dovey, sit down and reminisce with, but you have a relationship where you can still communicate. And there are boundaries that you put in place that they cannot cross. So that I think not giving them the opportunity to repeat what they've done as a child. Whether, let's say, for example, you have a parent who talks in a belittling manner, you put
Okay.
boundaries in place. This is not how you speak to me, and these are the consequences. This is what I'm prepared to do if I'm spoken that way, and they'll have to respect it. And now the roles are flipped. Man, I just thought of something. And now the roles are flipped in that the child is no longer in a vulnerable relationship. They're now an adult and they can put boundaries in place and they can say these are the consequences of crossing that boundary.
Okay. So we talked about boundaries. I'm going to open up to Mickey, but I'm going to come back about boundaries. Let me make sure I write this down. We talked about boundaries, but I want to explore a little bit more. So the question, Mickey, is how does an adult show respect to their parents who have abused or abandoned them?
Okay, so I would say with I'm in line with Denise.
Okay.
Because that's something that she taught me recently about setting boundaries. And I wouldn't say, like my mom was, I don't see it as being abusive,
Yeah.
but there were things that were said over and over again. And not just with her, with my, siblings.
Yeah.
And I was at the point where I was just tired of it. And I was ready to cut them off. Like literally, I was just like, I am so done. And I remember talking to Denise and she said, no, you can't do that. That's your family. You can't just cut them off. You just have to set up boundaries. It took me a few months to do that because I went to see them. I stayed at the hotel, and I think that was telling them that, hey, I am not going to put myself in a situation where you can just talk to me anyhow and it's okay. The second time I booked another hotel and I think that was what got my mom's attention. And she said, why are you staying at a hotel? And then I was able to explain to her that, I don't want to put myself in a vulnerable situation where I feel like I have to stay and take quote unquote abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why. And, she started crying. She told me it's okay. Her house is my house. And I said, but here are the rules. So if this happens, then this is what will happen. So definitely, I think things have changed since then. And it wouldn't have happened if I did not set boundaries.
I like that. Rules of engagement. That's another word I picked up.
Rules of engagement, pre-thinking through. And I want to pause for a second, and we're going to pick up right here next week. But I want to pause for a second because we talked about cutoff. And it's just a natural knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people to cut off. But I want to say this, even about this whole, I don't have nothing to do with this person, etc. You can go a while without speaking to a person, without interacting with a person. And you can believe that because you don't think about the person, interact with them, etc., that you've gotten over them because you've ceased all contact with them. But that is not necessarily, that is not how it works, rather, because what the cutoff is not a physical cutoff, not just a physical cutoff or a distancing or removing them from your, social media or interaction. You have to take into consideration the emotional part. And so what ends up happening is when you cut off from a person, you are acknowledging that the relationship dynamic is so intense and that you don't have the resources, the skill set to manage that relationship. So the only thing you can do is pull away from it. That's literally what you're acknowledging. I don't have the resources to set boundaries and to manage the relationship. And so the only thing I can do is to pull away from it. Here's the catch with that, though. The catch with that is the person still actually has a lot of control over you, because if you bump into that person, in an airport, if you bump into that person at a reunion or whatever it may be, you're still going to feel that emotional tension and anxiety and stress that you felt that caused the relationship to split up. The better thing to do is to learn how to set up healthy boundaries. And again, we're not talking about things like abuse. We're talking about just people who get on your last nerve, relationships that aggravate you. The thing to do is to learn how to manage those relationships, how to set up healthy boundaries, and how to put yourself in a place where the other individual doesn't have that kind of control over you. Wow, the time is gone. We talked about boundaries this week, but the question was, how does an adult show respect for their parents who have abused or abandoned them? And that's where we want to pick up at next time. How does an adult actually demonstrate it? So we talked about setting up boundaries, but what are the things that shows respect so that the parent knows that they are being respected? We're going to pick up there next time. I want to thank you for tuning in to our virtual book club. I want to thank each of you for your input, even on our Facebook feed. And then I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share. I also want to encourage you to check out our website and to support our community initiatives. We thank you for joining in. We're going to be back tomorrow, and we're going to continue Unboxed and look at how we unbox the power and potential of our relationships. Until we come back tomorrow and go through one of our relationship questions, you have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you.
Seasoned with Grace Unboxed also provides healthy relationship training and leadership development for businesses, churches, and community organizations. For a free consultation to discuss your team's needs, please contact us at our website at swg-unboxed.org. That's swg-unboxed.org.